joined by Mr. Paul Hansen. How are you today, sir?
Very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being on. So, you have a really interesting outlook on constitutional law and people's rights. A lot of people would take issue with the idea of no license, no registration, no proof of insurance. But you would say in some cases that is actually constitutionally correct in some circumstances.
Yes, because people have to realize that if the government can regulate certain things in your life, that means they can take it, they can actually tax it to the level that you can't do it no longer, or they can actually actually stop you from doing it totally. So if the in many of the countries where dictators took over, they take your mobility away. They take your ability to feed yourself. Oftentimes, they take your guns away, of course, and everything else that would get in the way of the dictator having complete control. So
So,
we our founding fathers knew that, and they made sure that they set up a republic form of government that's not allowed to do that.
so I don't want to. I I don't like labels and I don't like boxing people in. But would you say that you share some beliefs in common with libertarianism?
Yes, yes. Some people would call me a sovereign American or something like that, but sovereign citizen is the most common. I get pulled over quite often. The officers will call me a sovereign citizen, and sovereign means the opposite of citizen. So you can't put those two words together. But I'm neither a sovereign nor a citizen. I try to label myself exactly the way God would, as a free man under, as long as I obey God's laws.
So let me delineate for a moment then. So what you would say is that under the typical sense, you're not a sovereign citizen, but you believe that there are some of the things that they say that are potentially they kind of line up with the Constitution.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, it's not so important. Our country should be founded on the scriptures, not on the Constitution, and a lot of people don't realize that. Even though the Constitution, they devoted a lot of time to making sure that it didn't conflict with the scriptures. I think it does somewhat. If you notice the first documents that the founding fathers put together, they mentioned God a great deal, and when they got to the U.S. Constitution, they kind of dropped out quickly. But that's because the U.S. Constitution is predominantly a military document, and of course, it doesn't relate to people that are governed by God so much. But anytime you want to determine what truth is, you don't go to the Constitution; you go to God's Word.
As a Bible believing Christian, I would lean towards that. However, we do live in a nation of laws. Christ said, "Render to Caesar what's Caesar's." But uh, let's go to the concept of no driver's license, no proof of insurance necessary for people. You were telling me about that when you're not driving for commercial hire.
Right. I was going to start out with a story. Now, God has given us license to travel. He says the world is mine, and you can travel anywhere you want as long as you don't violate my law. So we do have a license to travel from God, but you're referring to a state license. So I'll tell you a real quick story, then we'll go into explaining why that happened. I was driving my Mercedes, and not a fancy car, but a nice car, and I didn't have no plates on it. I just have a plate on it identifying who the owner is, and then it's not for hire. Anyway, I was pulled over in Omaha, Nebraska. They of course they ask you for license, registration, insurance, and I tell them that I don't use those, and then they try to get some kind of a nexus with the either they try to get a nexus between you and the state by person, by activity, and by location.
Please define nexus for my viewers.
Nexus means a connection. A
Okay.
connection. If you're independent of the United States, then completely, then how can they claim that you affected the United States? So they're trying to get a nexus of effect. Um, if that helps. Okay, so then so anyway, they end up taking searching my car, towing it, and throwing me in jail that day, which is no problem for me. I take that with no problem at all. I've been arrested I don't know, 30, 40 times. And they've never done anything wrong except taught people the extent of liberty in America. And of course, the state doesn't like that because we're predominantly under statism, which is a form of socialism, a form of communism. But okay, so they tow my car and they arrest me. I get before the judge in a day or two. And I think they arrested me on Friday, so I was before the judge on Monday, so that'd be 3 days. And the judge, of course, they arraign you. And I never make a plea, so the judge puts a plea in for you, which is not a big thing. And then the judge released me on my own recognizance and tells me to come back in 30 days for trial. So of course I don't come back in. They arrest me again, and I get before a judge. Now these judges know me. They know I'm dangerous. They know I'm dangerous against their system, because they understand that when somebody knows the law, that it can be very exposing to their misuse of the law. So anyway, so they arrest me. I get before the judge. He lets me go on my own recognizance, no problem. And he says, come back in 2 weeks. I don't show up again. So they arrest me again. And the same thing happens. And then I don't show up again. They arrest me again. And then, so
Detecting a pattern here.
I'm on the fifth arrest. The first was with the car.
My God.
And then 4 failure to appears. Okay. So I'm before the judge, and I do this on purpose. They know I'm up to something, because I'm completely competent and I have no problem with doing this.
And to be clear, you've never resisted arrest.
No. I joke with them. These guys, the cops actually enjoy they enjoy arresting me, because they
enjoy it.
They show up in court, large numbers to watch, because
do they bring popcorn?
And you can't, they like to lazy boy chair and popcorn. A lot of it don't work out because they save me last, so I'll be sitting there for 4 to 5 hours at times. So they do that intentionally, so that people that come to try to observe my hearing, they get tired and they got to go do something, and very few of them can stick around that long. And when I get into a traffic case, when I walk into the courtroom, I often stand up and announce to everybody there, which is usually 50 to 100 people. And I tell them I'd like to have you people observe that I will be second to last or last. And then I just sit down, and they're wondering, why did he say that? And that's exactly what happens. I'm second to last or last. So anyway, so I'm before the court the 5th time, and the judge says that he can't let me go again because I failed to appear 4 times already. And I tell the judge to take judicial notice on the 4th Amendment. And the judge tries to talk over me. Now, this is a seasoned judge. And so I say it again. I ask the court to take judicial notice of the 4th Amendment of the Constitution for the United States of America. He talks over me. I say it again. He talks over me. I think I said it the 4th time, but this time I said, I ask you to take the judicial notice of the 4th Amendment now of the Constitution for the United States. And that judge, he put his name was Barrett, Judge Barrett. He's still a judge in Douglas County, Nebraska, largest county in Nebraska. And he puts his hands on the desk, puts his head down like a little child having to take medicine, and he's shaking his head back and forth. And he says, "Okay, Mr. Hansen, I'll take judicial notice of the 4th Amendment."
In just a moment, I'm going to ask you to refresh those of us who've forgotten what the 4th Amendment is. But if you know what the 4th Amendment is, go ahead and tweet us at Opinions Collide. What the 4th Amendment is. Go ahead and tweet that. In a little bit, we'll catch up on that. And if you do know, put it in the comment section before he gets to it. But keep going.
Okay.
Judicial notice of the 4th Amendment.
Okay, and then he says, "Sheriff, take him away." So they handcuff me and they take me out in the hallway. And for some odd reason, I'm in the hallway, and they never have done this. They've always taken me directly to a holding cell. And I'm standing there, and the sheriff's standing beside me, and apparently one of the sheriffs told him to wait. So in about 3 to 5 minutes, another sheriff walks up and says, "Mr. Hansen, turn around." He starts taking the handcuffs off, and he says, "I don't know what happened in there. Case dismissed." So
Wow.
now remember, I didn't ask for the case to be dismissed. I just asked for a judicial notice on the Fourth Amendment. So the head prosecutor who was employed with that county is named Marty Conboy, and he has been in office for 19 years. The prosecutor underneath him was going after me. I can't remember his name. I think Hoser, I think was his name. He was there 13 years. They both resigned from their job when I started writing letters to them and in reference to coming to court and testifying on their following due process, the Fourth Amendment. And the day that I had that hearing, the prosecutor stood up and said, Marty Conboy is resigning today, and he won't be here. And now, what's the odds of this guy resigning the day
No.
after 19 years when I subpoenaed him to court? And then the guy underneath him, 13 years, he resigned soon after. And a couple weeks later, I was at the courthouse, and two sheriffs walked up to me. Now, these sheriffs were not necessarily friendly with me. One gentleman was a black gentleman. He was pretty friendly with me, but the other guy, he was not friendly with me. He had very much contempt for me. He thought I was kind of a fool. But they both walked up to me and they said, do you know that and Hauser resigned? And they resigned because of, and then they quit talking, and they both went like this.
You pointed at you.
Pointed at me.
They pointed at you.
And then they said, what are you doing? These guys are dropping like flies. What are you doing?
So let's recap really quick for my audience, because this is really interesting. You had a plate stating who the owner of the vehicle was,
Right,
correct? It
right.
wasn't a Nebraska plate.
No, so
because this is happening in Nebraska.
It had what did it have on the plate? Not for hire.
Not for hire.
And then it just identified the owner.
So the not for hire is important.
Right.
And then you went to court. You did not resist arrest. By the way, that's where most people have a lot of contempt for those who call themselves sovereign citizens, is they always resist arrest.
No resistance at all. Now, I did tell them not to search my automobile, and they
respected that.
No, they searched it.
Oh.
And
okay.
I actually have a case in federal court on that right now.
So and to be clear, the purpose for that is an officer needs a warrant or your consent or exigency to search the car.
Yes, they have to have probable cause.
Probable cause, yes.
Now, even to issue a warrant, there must be probable cause.
Okay.
So when a judge, which is actually an administrator of the United States written law and authority,
You mean they don't write laws?
No. They can't issue a warrant without somebody putting their personal commercial liability on the line.
You mean you have to have a complaint?
Yep.
Someone who is asking for civil or criminal charges. Someone
Right.
pressing a charge.
Well, even civil or criminal, there has to be a sworn statement
Okay.
for the courts to have jurisdiction.
So then after they took you, so you didn't have a plate, or rather you had a plate saying not for hire and your name. You did not resist arrest. You went to prison. They let you off on your own recognizance, and this happened 5 times. Then you finally got the judge to, after asking him several times, got him to have judicial notice of the 4th, which we'll get to what that is in just a minute. He ultimately dropped the case, and then people started resigning.
Yep. From their after I subpoenaed them in to produce evidence of due process being followed to arrest me and prosecute me. That's what the whole case was for. That's when they resigned.
So you've had a lot of chance there in Twitter land and on YouTube, Facebook, what have you, to go ahead and put down what the Fourth Amendment was. Go ahead and remind folks who don't remember, didn't take a civics class, were supposed to, but didn't, what the Fourth Amendment is.
Okay. Now remember the the United States Constitution is a document for military. There is a portion in it that is addressed to the people, very small portion. The rest of the document is for the military structure, and that portion is called the Bill of Rights. Now, in 1791, the early founding fathers, many of them debated, says we should not put the Bill of Rights in here because the people are going to, that the Constitution applies to them. It doesn't apply to them. It applies to the government. It applies to the government is given to conduct their government purpose. But anyway, in 1791, I mean, so the Constitution was written the Declaration of Independence, 1776. 1791 was the Bill of Rights. 1789 was the U.S. Constitution, I believe.
Correct.
So soon after the Constitution was written, the Bill of Rights was added as an amendment. And those Bill of Rights are only directed toward man. They're not directed toward entities. They're not directed toward U.S. persons or U.S. citizens. But when you go into court and you ask them to take judicial notice of the Bill of Rights, you must say of the Constitution for the United States. Okay, you got to be very specific because they have another group of Bill of Rights in the state that are corporate Bill of Rights that read identical, but they're not afforded to man.
Okay.
So
I'll have to ask you about that at some point.
Yeah. So
But the Fourth Amendment.
The Fourth Amendment is that no warrant shall issue except by oath or affirmation. No warrant.
So, in other words, you're saying that you need a verified complaint.
Yep.
By someone complaining, and the state, you would say the state is not capable of making a complaint from a constitutional standpoint.
Now, the courts have ruled that if there is no verified complaint, there are no charges.
My goodness, so that really changes a lot of our laws. A lot of our laws are based on statutes that are in place that say you have to have a driver's license, and if you don't, you not having that is an offense against the state or against the statute, and that's considered our way of regulating who's on the road. But what you're saying is that that's not constitutional.
Well, license is constitutional if it's applied to the right person, the right activity, the right location, the right land. Location, land is synonymous. Territorial, land, location,
sure,
they're all synonymous. So now I was traveling down a road, and I've never elected to create any nexus or contract with the United States that would waive any of my Bill of Rights. No.
So what would be a connection to the United States that would waive, say, your right to travel, as you would call it?
If you were carrying something commercially, it's very possible yet that the location that they would have governance, because you're using the roads for commercial reasons, and the courts have ruled that you're not allowed to do that. Now, that may only apply on government roads. Very few roads in America are government roads. But anyway, that would fall under common law, and you're still governed under common law, all your activities. But,
so define common law, because it's important for
common law is
terms.
where the jury decides the law and the facts. Statutory law is where the law is applied within the parameter of legislative congressional law.
Okay, so for those of us dwelling on the fifth grade level like me, let me see if I can regurgitate that to you correctly. Common law is something where it's a jury by your peers, where someone has made a complaint, and statutory law is something like you don't have this permit or this license or this what have you. There's no one injured. However, the state has said that this is illegal, therefore you've broken the law, therefore you're guilty of a crime.
Yes, but that only applies to certain people, certain activities, and certain locations.
Okay.
Always they've got to prove all three of those. The United States has to prove all three of those elements.
And where's the standard for that? Is that in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights or the Declaration?
The Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, Constitution for the United States of America. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17 says it gives the parameter geographically of where the United States written laws have force and effect of law.
Okay.
And it says
Where they have jurisdiction.
Land jurisdiction. And there's court cases that say that all acts of Congress are territorially limited. All acts of contract. Social Security Act, Department of Roads Act.
Are you saying you don't need a Social Security number?
No. Very few people in America qualify for a Social Security number. Very few.
Well, it's news to, I think, everyone in my listening audience. Yeah. What do you do about? Well, okay.
Well, that's another topic.
Let's not get into that.
That's an extremely important topic.
Well, it's going to be insolvent in 2026.
As long as there's assets, there's ways for the government to deceive you to give the production of those assets over to the
steal
state.
More of your wealth by printing more money, devaluing your wealth.
But so anyway. As far as my traveling down that road, they had to prove that I, as a man, because the Bill of Rights only applies to a man, am not allowed to do that activity at that location. And they have to have a sworn complaint in the record that I, as a man, was not allowed to do that activity. And then they got to define the activity. And then they got to give a description of the land location. Now, they will always say a county.
Okay.
Because in this case, they would say Douglas County. Now, county is a trick word. If you go into statutes at large, which is the written law of Congress. Statutes at large is the law of Congress. Revised statutes are not. The United States Code is not law. It's a revision of the law. And it's quite often not accurate because the reason they tweak it and change it is so they can expand congressional law. But Congress defined county as a possession or territory of the United States. So when you walk into any court, it's a traffic ticket, it's a parking ticket, make an income for federal or state taxes, they will always say that you are making that income in a specific county.
Okay.
But they won't tell you what the word county means. The word county means that you are making it on government land. So it's extremely important to object when they try to put that on the record. It's just objection, asserting facts not in evidence. The judge will say, "What are you talking about, Mr. Hansen?" Well, the witness just testified that the activity occurred in the county. That has not been evidenced yet. So I require that the witness will define the word county. I have the definition of county right here. I'd like to have the court take judicial notice of it. From statutes at large, and that witness will have to testify, bring forth evidence that that land is of the United States, and that's what scares them the most, because many federal courthouses are not even on government land. Very few county and district courthouses are on government land.
And you would be, so let's back up and again redefine things for my listeners, because I want to make sure I'm clear myself. This is really interesting. You're saying that if I am doing business on my private property or on an employer's property,
private land,
but it's private land, it's not a government-owned asset. They don't have jurisdiction. It's like you being in a parking lot. If you double park in a parking lot, it's awfully hard for the government to actually try to do some. It's hard for an officer to write a ticket for double parking.
Yeah, he cannot. If you're doing donuts in Walmart parking lot, the United States written laws do not apply.
They'll try to get you for disturbing the peace or what have you.
They will write your ticket. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what we're talking about here is you're saying because you're driving on the road, and either it's a road that's leased or it's held by a trust or what have you, there are lots of cases where you're driving on land that's not actually government land. It's a lot like the parking lot
Right, right.
where,
Now,
where you can't get the ticket. Most people would say, though, that it's eminent domain. Let me push back a little bit and say that most people would say that the government eminent domained that land, therefore they own it.
in some cases, they have a right to do that, but it's very few. They can only eminent domain land for a military purpose. And once it's received as for a military purpose, they have 5 years to implement it into a military purpose. Otherwise, they got to give it back or auction it off to the people again. Now, all these national parks and so forth are obviously not used for military purpose, and I wouldn't be surprised if you'd investigate they're not actually owned by the government. They're probably owned by a corporation that is governed by the government.
Well, a lot of toll roads are, but how's the government supposed to have the right or the capacity to build roads? You have to eminent domain people's land away from them to be able to build a road there, right?
And they do that.
And they do that.
Yeah, but there's a provision for it in common law. If the railroad's coming through and the people decide that you can't hold your 1 acre of land to stop a 1,000-mile railroad track, and the people would have a hearing. It'd be under common law, though, and they would determine what is the just compensation for that gentleman to go buy another piece of land.
So what you're saying is a lot of these roads haven't been properly acquired, and there's no proof of custody.
Well, there's an owner. If you owned a house on the east side of the road and I owned a house on the west side of the road, we own the land almost always to the center of the road.
Really?
Almost always. Even the interstate. In Nebraska, there's I-80. It goes almost east-west of the entire nation. That land is leased land.
It's leased land.
Leased land. It's 99-year. It's a perpetual. I don't even know if it's 99-year lease. It's just perpetual lease. And a friend of mine.
Leased to whom?
The United States. So a friend of mine sold some land. A friend of mine's friend sold some land for Interstate I-80 in Nebraska, and he told my friend that he says, "This is the strangest document. They're not purchasing the land. They're just paying me exactly what the land is worth, and it says in here that it's a perpetual use." So they're not even purchasing the land. It's just perpetual use.
So a lot of these roads are under that. That's really interesting. And I'm going to ask you more about that in just a minute. We're coming up on a hard break here, but we'll catch you guys on the other side of the break. I hope you find this as fascinating as I do. And we're back. Thank you for tuning back in. This is When Opinions Collide. I'm your host, John Arthur Fiala, and I am joined once again by Paul Hansen. We've been talking about the necessity for driver's license and registration and proof of insurance, but we've kind of been building up some of the pieces to the argument that Mr. Hansen has that you don't actually necessarily need those if you're driving for private use. You often hear sovereign citizens talk about this in these videos, but they're screeching and screaming and railing. And I'd like to emphasize again that by your own words, Mr. Hansen has never resisted arrest. That's really important, guys. If you fight it out in court, and apparently you've won quite a few altercations with that. But I want to go back to what we were talking about. We were just before the break speaking about licenses and actually your right to travel on roads that may or may not be owned by the government. And you're saying that in a lot of cases it's actually a leased property, so the government, the inference I would assume is that because it's a leased property by private owners, the government, you're saying, doesn't have the authority to license your travel on that road.
They don't have territorial jurisdiction to govern it under congressional and legislative written law. Remember, I told you that all congressional law of the United States is land limited. So, and now you don't have to prove the land issue; they have to prove it. So, if you have a road, let's say you had a road that you wanted to travel every day, 5 days a week to go to work, you can write the governor of the state, and you can force the governor. You just contact me, Paul J.J. Hansen Law at gmail.com, or go to my website. One of my websites is freeinhabitant.info. freeinhabitant.info. And you can contact me and I can help you with this process. I sell legal briefs to do a great many things. And many people say that that's one of the best websites they've ever seen on law, that have been in law for over 20 years. But the United States owns 24% of America. So like 84% of Nevada is owned by the United States, 34% of California, 1.4 of Nebraska, 0.4 of Connecticut. So every area is different.
Okay.
Now, Lincoln's War kind of started in the middle of the country. So you'll see a great deal more federalism taking place on the development of land from like Nebraska to the west. Great deal larger portions of land held for the federal government. But if you go to the east direction, very little of the land is held for federal use. The government doesn't need very much land to hold a military purpose.
So, is that saying that if you're driving without a license with that intention, you're kind of gambling based on where you are?
Well, my point is that you have freedom of mobility no matter if you're on non-government land or government land. But your freedom of mobility on government land is only the right to pass through. You don't have any right to do business on the way through. But they're not going to make a big deal out of it. If you're driving through their land and you stop to have a hamburger or a hot dog or stay overnight, that's not going to be a big issue. But if you stop and stay for a long period of time, they can actually determine that you're not using it to pass through. You're actually acting as a resident. The term resident actually means that you're residing on government land in statute so large. So now, if you're traveling across Nevada, you're going to likely be on government roads most of the time. You'll be all right if they pull you over. You just hand them our documents and explain to them that they would have to evidence that you're carrying passengers or cargo for a profit or a fee. So the burden is shifted to them.
So explain that to me, because, or in my audience, because a driver's license is something that most people don't realize where that came from and why it's relevant to what you're saying, that you're not for hire.
Right. For example, Jimmy Carter wrote a book, and he said during harvest time down there, he would see all these trucks come out of storage, and they'd all have not for hire on the side of the trucks. They didn't have no plates or nothing, just not for hire. So they were noticing anybody that was driving a truck, and it had to be a single axle truck. The government doesn't allow you to use anything other than a single axle truck, which can carry up to I think 9 or 10, probably 9 ton.
That's a single drive axle, correct?
Yeah, drive axle, yes.
So and, 2 axles, no more.
So single front axle, single drive axle. You can put 9 or 10 ton on it, and but anything bigger than that, then they get involved. But they consider that normal use of the roads. So we don't have any trouble with our vehicles, motorcycles, and so forth. And they also say that they restrict certain trailers too. I don't know. They really don't want to get involved in it. They don't want exposure. So if you're a little bit over the line, they're not going to let you go if you have the right legal defense. Now, if you're driving on land that's not owned by the government, they're going to try to treat you the same way. They're going to pull you over, ask you for license, registration, insurance. And what I instruct my clients to do, and we've been very successful with this, is always identify yourself with your full given name and a mailing location. Okay, a mailing location. That's all you got to give them, and then make them prove the rest. Now, when they start asking you questions about license, registration, insurance, you just simply say, "I desire to take the fifth on that." The Fifth Amendment. So you don't have to give them any information that can be used against you in a potential criminal situation. And they're supposed to stop asking you questions immediately on that. Now, what they'll do is they'll bring in the next guy that drives up with a cop car. He'll start asking you questions. You have to tell him the same thing. And they're going to bring in the supervisor. He's going to try to pump you for information. You tell him the same thing. And don't give him any documents. Don't give him any driver's license, no registration, no insurance card, no nothing. Make them prove everything. It doesn't hurt if you have a plate on your car or not, because the plate on the car is not a reason to apply state law to you. The activity of the car is the reason.
But if you do not provide identification or a license or anything like that, eventually they'll probably arrest you, won't they?
Well, you're required to identify yourself.
Okay.
And normally your identification, I guess I should say your full name and your birthday and your mailing location. That's all you have to give them. I forgot about the birthday. And they'll find it in their system. I mean, the chances of your name being Paul John Hansen, born on the same day as me, is very remote. Very remote. It's possible.
Especially because it's not. But yeah, no, yeah.
And they can bring it up on their system. They can see your picture. So
Okay.
so they'll be able to bring it. They'll be able to bring that up on their system nowadays, and they'll see your picture, and they'll come back. And I've had many times where they write me a ticket just like normal, and then I file the documents into the court challenging the verified complaint, and the case just disappears.
So why would you do this? Isn't it easier to just get a driver's license and?
Well, the definition, you alluded to what a driver's license is. The definition of all licenses is to do something that without the license would be illegal. So what they're actually saying is when you're required to have a driver's license, they're actually saying that you do not have a right to mobility. Now, that's not true.
Like, what if my father cuts his hand off while working with the power tool? What do I do about that? Do I wait for 911, or can I drive him to the hospital?
Right.
Or going to work?
What happens if you want to go down and get a hamburger? What happens if you want to go shopping? They cannot restrict your mobility.
So you're saying that a license is not constitutionally legal for someone who's driving not for hire. Why the distinction?
If you're driving for hire, that means you're using the open ways, somebody else's care of the road and so forth to make income. And if you're doing that, the government has deemed, and successfully so, that you need to be licensed to do that. You need to pitch in to care for the roads because you're using them for a commercial reason, and they justify that. Now, if you've see, most Americans are not U.S. citizens. Very few are. The only way you can become a U.S. citizen is you take an oath of citizenship. If you haven't stood in front of a United States magistrate, raised your right hand, and taken the oath of citizenship, you are not a U.S. citizen.
So I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. Are you saying that I'm not a natural born citizen of the United States of America?
You're not a U.S. citizen.
Well, that kind of flies in the face of
Yes.
of all of the.
And that's the first thing they try to get you to say when you go into a federal courtroom, is they say that you're a U.S. citizen, because if you say that you're a U.S. citizen, you're not afforded the Bill of Rights. You do not have the right to mobility.
So where is that found? That's an interesting statement.
The case?
Well, yeah. Oh, okay. So this is based on case law.
Yeah. There's a case law that actually says that the Bill of Rights is not afforded to the United States citizen.
Yeah. Do you have that case offhand?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But
okay.
I believe I can get it. It's generally accepted in courts because as soon as you start saying that, the judge is like, get this guy out of here. This is not good. He knows his stuff.
This guy's a problem.
Yeah, get him out of here. He's going to set us back a long time and potentially millions of dollars. But if you elect to become a United States citizen, you waive your Bill of Rights, because they're going to treat you as a U.S. citizen, and a U.S. citizen has privileges and benefits from the United States, and they're going to have the Bill of Rights that are almost read identical to the Bill of Rights that apply to a man, but it'll be in the statutory world, and their court rules say that that's kind of elastic. Those Bill of Rights are elastic, and but they have determined that the United States citizen does not possess the right to travel.
But you're saying that you were born in the United States of America.
Nebraska, yes.
In Nebraska. Okay, so I was born in Houston, but you're saying that neither of us are United States citizens.
No, there's only the United States written law specifically says there's only one way to become a United States citizen, and it says none other.
Really? Including being natural born?
It says none other except by
oath
or affirmation.
So wouldn't the Pledge of Allegiance be an affirmation?
No, you got to stand in front of a magistrate that's authorized to give the oath or affirmation of the United States legislature to become a United States citizen. You got to
Well, that
be you got to be in front of a proper judge, and it's got to be on the record. And generally, what they do is they bring you into a room with large amounts of people, and most of these people are from Mexico or so forth, and they're going to do 50 or 200 of them at the same time. I've never seen it, but I've been told. And they'll ask you to everybody to take 2 steps forward and raise your right hand. Sometimes they just tell you to raise your right hand, and you've already filled out a lot of paperwork already.
Yeah.
And then they swear you into a U.S. citizen, and they have cameras on you, and all those records go into vital statistics, and they have evidence that you're a U.S. citizen.
So you're saying without evidence, it doesn't follow. But what about my passport?
No, you can mark on thousands of papers that you are a U.S. citizen. That is not evidence. That is not fact evidence that you're a U.S. citizen. It is prima facie evidence. Now, prima facie evidence is, let's say, for example, you're in court and they put your, and they do this. They'll put your, what did you get? Your airline ticket? What's that? Your passport. They'll
Sure.
put your passport documents into the court record, and then they'll put you on the witness chair, and they'll try to get you to testify that you, say that you're a U.S. citizen on your passport, but you're trying to testify in court that you've never elected to become a United States citizen. See, in court, you never say that you're a U.S. citizen, and you never say you're not a U.S. citizen. When they ask you and you're in court, it's very important to do this. Very important. We've done it, and we've won federal cases that no one, like for example, we won a case in Florida. No one has ever won a case in Florida in over 9 years. Not even one person. And I won the case, and my co-defendant won the case. When we were walking out of the courtroom, the sheriff walked up to us, and he said, U.S. Marshal, he said, I've been here 9 years. Not one person has ever won a court case in this courtroom that's gone to trial. He says, I'm impressed. And what they tried to do in that courtroom right in the beginning, they asked you, John, where'd you go to school? What'd you take in college? What'd your parents do for a living? You're a U.S. citizen, aren't you, John?
And you're saying due to this loophole or blind spot in the law, if I say yes
or no, you're in trouble.
or no, I'm in trouble. So what do I say? I plead the fifth?
No, you say I have no evidence in my possession I've ever elected to become a United States citizen.
It sounds like I don't recollect.
You can say that. You can say I don't recollect. I do not recall. Not that I'm aware of. I've been in court before where the prosecutor tried to get evidence of personal jurisdiction over me. U.S. court, if it's challenged properly, the prosecutor of the county or the city has to put evidence on the record that the U.S. court has jurisdiction over you, because U.S. courts do not have general jurisdiction. They got limited jurisdiction. So you have a right to challenge that. I was in court on a housing codes. And because when I started fighting law, they just blacklisted me and they tried to destroy my life. It cost me millions of dollars. But anyway, so I'm in the judge says, Mr. Prosecutor, how are you going to prove personal jurisdiction over Mr. Hansen, because he's made a valid challenge here in this courtroom? He said, Mr. Hansen, are you willing to take the witness chair? And I said, yeah. And so he puts me in the witness chair and he asks me 15 questions. Do you have a license? Do you have voter's registration? Do you have a birth certificate? Do you live in the city, county, or state of Nebraska, Omaha, Douglas County? Do you have a Social Security card? I think he had like 15 questions. I was very impressed with how he could rattle them off. He knew what nexus was. See, they're trying to get a nexus.
Make a connection for jurisdiction.
Yep. Every question I said, not that I'm aware of. And that prosecutor had tears running down his face. His face is all red. The courtroom was full of people that come and watch me. A lot of them are lawyers. Because I'm actually a rather famous person in Omaha, Nebraska. They put a lot of stuff on the internet, try to slander me and so forth.
You're more like infamous, like the Simon Templar shows from the 60s.
But the people that have knowledge, if they stick around long enough and read far enough, they'll realize that they're slandering me to try to hide the truth. So the judge cut in after 15 questions, And she said, "Mr. Prosecutor, you have produced no evidence that this court has personam jurisdiction over Mr. Hansen." And I mean, the crowd is just sitting there like, "What just happened?" If this was on YouTube, that thing would have went viral big time. What just happened here?
Well, if that happened and they put it on YouTube, you'd be demonetized for hateful or wrong content. Please don't take me down, YouTube. Please don't take me down.
But then see, I've been in court hundreds of times, 400 times maybe, and maybe even more. But every time I'm in court, they let out a little tidbit of information, and I gathered those together with hundreds of other people across the country, because the internet is connected massive, very, very good way to sort out the good stuff and the bad stuff. Because the hardest thing in law is to sort out the truth and the fiction.
Sure.
Because almost everybody in America thinks that U.S. citizenship is the number one thing you want to mention when you're in a federal court or a state court, and it's the worst thing you can do.
Well, it seems like it's really a crock for people who wait in line. You're saying that the illegal immigrants probably have better standing than the legal immigrants if they're both not citizens,
Well,
or if they're in the same standing that you and I are.
Well, just the law is that if you've done an act to waive your Bill of Rights, you don't have the Bill of Rights, and they can come against you administratively. Now, all U.S. courts are administrative courts; none of them are judicial.
But so I'm going to ask about that in a second. But due to case law, you're saying that
case law is actually evidence of law.
Sure.
It's not really law.
No.
Okay.
And the fact that our country is run on case law is absolutely bunk.
Mm-hmm.
Is ridiculous. But anyway, but case law has lent credence to the idea that when you provide an oath or affirmation of citizenship, that you've waived your Bill of Rights.
Yes.
While trying to attain them. That's what I would call a bad court ruling.
See, the only way a U.S. court can have jurisdiction is statutorily. So,
Sure.
So if you maintain your status as a man, the U.S. court has no jurisdiction. They have to prosecute you under common law, and they don't want to do common law because they can't hardly ever win a case in common law, and they don't want anybody to know about common law.
So define common law, because
they don't want the control of the court to be turned over to a jury of 12.
So
Remember I said the jury of 12 decides the law and the facts.
But we have juries of 12.
Those are not common law courts. Those are statutory courts, and the jury of 12 is only there as an advisory aid to the judge.
So please delineate what makes a common law court different than a statutory law. But first, define common law.
Common law in America is biblical law.
And we get common law, and I'm objection, Your Honor, leading the witness. I know I am, but common law came over from Great Britain from an extent.
Well, not really.
To an extent,
it's world. Common law is worldwide.
Sure.
People. The Bible says that the heathen follows the common law, and he doesn't even know it.
Well,
he knows that he doesn't want to be killed.
But common law is like natural law. So like if you have two people living together in the same house and they want to separate and there's a division of assets, we call that a common law divorce. Because it based on common law, one party has some potential hold over the other party's assets that they want to split. So,
well, the truth is, in a common law divorce, the jury has to say so how the assets are divided up, not the United States administrators.
Man, that would change. It would change a lot of.
Yes.
Change a lot of things. So what's the difference between a common law court and a statutory court, and where are these common law courts? Because all these other courts would appear to be statutory.
You can convene common law courts anywhere you want, as long as you follow due process, and the United States is supposed to honor them. There's history on that. An example, in 1909, I believe there was a case in Colorado where a lawyer and a judge got together and stole this man's gold rights. So the lawyer just went to the court and stole his land.
There was corruption between him and the judge.
Yep. So he came out of the courtroom and he started telling everybody about how he just got cheated and lost his land, and they're going like, "What?" And there was somebody there that knew the law, and they set up chairs in front of the courthouse, and they convened a common law proceeding. They got 12 judges together that, common people that made an oath to honor God and be impartial, follow God's law, and make a determination here. They had a hearing. The other side had an opportunity to tell their side of the story, the plaintiff and the defendant. And the jury ruled that they had no authority to take this man's land, and they wrote the determination out and took it into the district court judge, the corrupt judge, and laid it on his bench. And the judge says, "I'll honor that determination."
So, but what happens when they don't? Because there are a lot of statutory laws that are or courts that are going to say,
then you can sue that. You can sue that judge. That judge is going to be in
common law or statutory court.
Common law, because the common law court is higher than the statutory court.
So, but I guess my question is where's your remedy with a statutory court if they refuse the common law decision?
Your community.
Man, that's hard though.
Well, I had
it's hard to arrange.
Yeah, it's hard because most people have turned all the court systems over to the United States, and it's.
You're saying that we've given up our freedoms in exchange for a modicum of security.
For lots of reasons, they did that, and it's all wrong. It's not right. It's hard to hold on to your freedom, but it's well worth it. A friend of mine got a determination in Washington State for 2 determinations for his clients. I'm basically a law expert. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a licensed attorney, and I refuse to get a licensed attorney license from the state.
Why would you do that?
Because once you get a license, they can control you, and there's no reason for me to have a license and be controlled by the state. I'm plenty busy on the common law side, and I can do. I have attorneys walk up to me and get me off to the side, and they say, "You can do a lot of things I can't do."
So the bar, normally you have to be a member of the bar to practice law in the United States. Why wouldn't you be part of the bar association?
Because the bar association controls the attorneys, and
how so?
The judges can arrest you. They can fine you if you have a bar license. They can take your license away. They can really cause a lot of trouble, and they can threaten you. And a lot of lawyers spend $100,000 to get that license. They go to school and so forth, and they're going to make millions of dollars in their career because of that license. The average income of a bar licensed attorney, I think, in America is about $500,000 a year when you average it out over their lifetime, because they, exponentially the revenue they've made has been invested, and it starts growing exponentially at the last 20 years of their life, and it turns into about $500,000 a year for a lot of most lawyers. They're a lot wealthier than most people think, and it's always been that way. The Sanhedrin are extremely wealthy in 70 A.D. when Jerusalem was destroyed. They were billionaires. But anyway, so the Bar Association license is a license to steal and to make lots of money rather easily, and very few people are willing to give that up.
Well, I have a lot of friends who are lawyers, and they're members of the Bar Association. But what you're saying is that that's actually outside of the necessary rule book based on the common law that our Constitution and country were founded on.
Well, the Constitution isn't common law. It's a portion of it is the original creation of it is common law, but the structure of its implementation is written law, statutory.
Okay, so let's tie this around back full circle.
Okay.
So you're saying that because the law for a driver's license is statutory, and because you have the right to travel, you don't need.
Yeah, right to mobility.
You have the right to mobility. Yeah. You don't actually need a driver's license, because a license is permission to do something that's otherwise illegal. What do we do about people who don't know how to drive or don't?
Common law.
Common law.
Yep.
So if they're reckless, we actually have to enforce the laws.
If I drive through any area of America, common law can govern me. They can arrest me and have a trial right there.
Yikes! Sounds like the Wild West.
Well, when in many ways it can be. You want to stay out of those communities, or at least drive slow through them. But in godly communities where most godly people want to live, common law is a wonderful tool. Wonderful tool.
So it's really, really interesting. We're starting to come up on our time here, but I think I want to hear more. And at some point, I'm hoping to get someone else in here to bounce ideas back, because this is really interesting, and I hope you guys are interested too. Once again, where's a good place for people to find you?
My website, freeinhabitant.info.com. Now that'll take you to 2 or 3 different websites. Also, my email address is Paul JJ. The letters JJ is in Jaybird. Paul JJ Hansen, HANSEN Law LAW @gmail.com.
Paul JJ Hansen at
Paul JJ Hansen Law @gmail.com.
@gmail.com. Okay, excellent.
You just type in Paul JJ Hansen Omaha, and
you'll pop
all
up.
over the place. Yeah. Now most of a lot of these people, I had city inspectors that tried to prosecute me a number of times. They threw me in jail. I've been in jail for 5.5 years, 5.5 total.
Oh my goodness.
5.5 years I've been spent in jail. Now it was 30 days here, 60 days here, 90 days here, but it added up. Now we're going back into federal court to sue that. We have one case for 500
because they've wrongfully imprisoned you.
And it took me this long to figure it out. 500. One case is 538 million, and the other one is 30-some million. So if I just get a small percentage of those, and the lawyers actually believe that that's a valid number to ask for, so obviously, if I get 1/10 of that, it's going to be much better off than I am now. But the courts will pay large amounts of money for deprivation of rights. If you look up 18 United States Code 242, you can see what they can be prosecuted for violating any of your Bill of Rights.
18 USC 242, folks. With that, we are up on our time. I want to thank you for tuning in to When Opinions Collide. Thank you for listening on AM 1540, 101.7 if you're in Pasadena or Clear Lake. This has been the Edge Radio Network, because truth still matters. Contact us on our Facebook page at When Opinions Collide, or at Opinions Collide on the Twitter. And we got a YouTube channel, whatnot. Check out Edge Radio stuff. We've got some great lineup coming. And I believe Meridate is up next.
(868-6166), or look us up at HoustonChiroClinic.com.
1540 AM and 101.7 FM Houston, Pasadena, Clear Lake, Galveston.
Your greatest wealth is health. This health capsule is brought to you by Arango Chiropractic Clinic. The nervous system controls the function of every cell in our body, and as such, it controls every aspect of our lives. This is why maintaining a properly functioning nervous system is lifestyle. By restoring the integrity